The cabin lights were dim, the engines hummed their steady lullaby, and most passengers were dozing off. But then, like a blade cutting through silence, the intercom crackled with a single word, "Raven." Heads turned, confusion spread, and the woman in row 22, who moments ago looked like just another weary traveler, opened her eyes. Everyone else heard a code. She heard a call that could expose everything she had tried to leave behind. The hum of the engines was steady, almost hypnotic, as the aircraft sliced through the night sky. Most passengers had surrendered to exhaustion, heads tilted against windows, soft snores rising here and there. Flight attendants moved quietly down the aisle, dim cabin lights casting a warm, drowsy glow. In row 22, she appeared to be like everyone else. A woman wrapped in a light blanket, eyes closed, breathing even and calm. To the casual observer, she was just another traveler, lost in sleep somewhere between departure and destination. No one would have suspected that beneath her quiet exterior lay years of experience, scars unseen, and a story that could shake the calm of this entire flight. She had trained herself to rest anywhere, on the ground, in a trench, or in the back of a roaring military aircraft. But here, in this civilian cabin, her sleep was fragile. Every vibration, every muffled voice, every clink of a service cart tugged at her awareness. She wasn't truly asleep, just resting in that half-state soldiers learn when danger is never far away. And then it happened. A sudden crackle on the intercom broke the monotony. The captain's voice had been calm all evening, giving updates on turbulence and arrival times. But this time there was something different, something sharper. "Attention, Raven." The word echoed through the cabin, crisp and deliberate. Passengers stirred, frowning in confusion. Some glanced at one another, whispering, "What did he say, Raven?" To them it was just a strange word, maybe a misheard instruction. But to her it wasn't just a word. It was a trigger. Her eyes snapped open, pupils narrowing instantly. That single call sign carried years of weight. Missions in shadow deserts, operations that never made the news, lives saved and lives lost. Raven wasn't a nickname. It was an identity, one she had buried the moment she walked away from that world. Her heart didn't race, soldiers trained past that, but her breath slowed, measured. The instincts kicked in: assess, analyze, anticipate. Who had spoken it? Why now? The intercom cut off, leaving an uneasy silence in its wake. Passengers shifted in their seats, but the cabin slowly lulled back to its rhythm, unaware of the storm they had just awakened. She sat still, but her mind was already calculating. Either it was coincidence, a meaningless phrase overheard, or it was intentional. And if it was intentional, it meant her cover was broken. In the reflection of the window beside her, she caught her own gaze. Calm, unreadable, but with that flicker of steel she thought she'd left behind. She whispered, so low no one could hear, "Who knows?" And with that, the night flight was no longer ordinary. The word Raven lingered in her mind like an echo that refused to fade. She sat motionless in her seat, but behind her steady expression, memories stirred like a storm breaking open. It had been years since she had last heard it spoken aloud. Years since she'd been part of the world where names were not names but ciphers. Identity stripped away, replaced with call signs. Her real name had been tucked into silence, forgotten by those who had once used it. Out there, she was not a daughter, not a friend, not even a soldier by rank. She was Raven, the shadow that arrived where hope had already collapsed. The first memory hit her with force. The desert. A night so dark the stars looked like pinpricks of fire on black velvet. Her team had been outnumbered, pinned down by gunfire near the ruins of a bombed-out compound. It was her voice, sharp and precise, that guided them out. Her hand steady on the trigger, her orders carrying the weight of command. The mission had been classified as impossible. But impossible had been Raven's specialty. Another image, blurred with smoke and blood. A helicopter spiraling under fire, her comrades screaming through headsets. She remembered climbing into the wreckage, pulling survivors out while the flames clawed at the wreck. For every life saved, another memory of failure lingered. The weight of those she couldn't save clung to her, just as much as the victories. That was the curse of Raven. But the most painful memory wasn't a battle. It was the betrayal. A briefing room, cold steel chairs, shadows of men in suits, their voices low, clipped. She remembered the words that ended her career, her life as she knew it. You are no longer required, not discharged, not honored, just erased. She had walked away that day, leaving behind the name Raven, as though it could be shed like an old skin. She told herself she'd live quietly, no missions, no orders, no wars. She would learn to be ordinary. And yet, here she was, thousands of feet above the ground, trapped in a cabin full of unsuspecting strangers. And someone had dared to pull that buried name back into the light. Her hands clenched beneath the blanket, fingers curling like talons. The old instincts told her this was no accident. Someone wanted her to hear it. Someone on this plane knew who she was. But who? She scanned the cabin without moving her head. A businessman scrolling through spreadsheets, a teenager with headphones lost in music, an elderly couple holding hands. Ordinary. All ordinary. But she knew better. She had learned long ago that threats wore masks of normalcy. A smile, a laugh, a kind face. All could hide the sharp edge of betrayal. Her chest tightened, not from fear, but from the inevitability of it all. No matter how far she ran, no matter how many names she took, the world would always find Raven again. She closed her eyes for a moment, not to rest, but to listen, to remember the old training, to awaken what she had tried to bury. The call sign had been spoken. The past was no longer behind her. It was here in this cabin, sitting among these people. And the question that burned in her mind was no longer why. It was who. The cabin seemed unchanged on the surface. A flight attendant poured coffee for a passenger. A child kicked at the back of a seat, and the engines roared in their steady rhythm. But to her, everything had shifted. She could feel it, the way the air itself had grown tense, as though the word Raven had settled over the passengers like invisible smoke. Most of them dismissed it, of course. Just a strange announcement. Just a pilot's slip of the tongue. But some didn't. She noticed the subtle movements. The man too rose ahead, adjusting his posture a little too carefully. The woman across the aisle lowering her book but not turning the page. The quick glance of a uniformed crew member who looked directly at her before pretending to scan the rest of the cabin. They knew. Or at least someone did. She leaned back, masking her alertness, her mind sharpening into the old rhythm of threat assessment. Every sound was catalogued, every shift in movement noted. The civilian in her wanted to dismiss it, to believe it was nothing more than paranoia. But Raven, the part of her she had sworn to bury, knew better. The intercom clicked again, briefly, but no words followed. Just static. A signal. A test. Her pulse remained steady, but she felt the weight of decision pressing on her chest. She had two choices. Option 1. Remain still, stay hidden, and pray the name had been spoken without intent. A ghost could only be hunted if it revealed itself. Option 2. Rise. Confront. Step back into the identity she had fled from, even if it meant pulling everyone on this plane into a storm they weren't ready for. Passengers were starting to notice her. She saw their eyes catch on her posture, too rigid for someone just waking from a nap. The quiet intensity in her gaze. The way she wasn't confused like the others but focused. Whispers started. Did the captain say, Raven? Maybe it's some military thing. Or code. The speculation was spreading like fire, and she could feel the pressure tightening around her. The longer she stayed silent, the more suspicious she became. Her fingers brushed the edge of the small duffel at her feet, her only luggage. Inside, nothing unusual for a traveler. But she knew, hidden deep in a stitched seam, there was something she had kept, something she had promised never to touch again. The tension broke when a flight attendant approached her row, smiling politely, yet with a stiffness that betrayed training of a different kind. Not customer service, discipline. Excuse me, miss? The attendant said, her tone soft, almost rehearsed. The captain would like a word with you. The passengers nearby fell silent, pretending not to listen while hanging on every syllable. Her jaw tightened. This was it, the moment the past had reached out and grabbed her. She rose slowly, every movement controlled, her blanket slipping away. The cabin seemed to shrink around her as dozens of eyes followed. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of the name settle fully back onto her shoulders. Raven had been called, and Raven would answer.